It doesn't get much better than this. I haven't really ever mentioned this on my channel before, but music has been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. As a kid, I would listen to the radio all the time. And one Christmas, I got a tape recorder as a gift. On the weekends when they would do like the top 40 on the radio, I'd use the tape recorder to record songs off of the radio using the little handheld microphone to record the songs so I could listen to them later. When I was a preteen, my dad bought himself this really nice stereo system. Huge speakers, nice receiver, and he bought a turntable. And he got some albums to listen to on that turntable, which I listened to as well. And I started buying records that I wanted to listen to that I also listened to on his turntable. Later on, when I got my first legitimate job, which was in fast food, so I guess legitimate's just a matter of opinion. But when I got that job, the first large purchase that I made was for a boombox with a CD player. And I bought a bunch of CDs that I listened to on that CD player. I still do have a bunch of those CDs in storage, but I don't break them out and listen to them much anymore because, of course, we live in the age of digital, and songs, millions of them, and entire albums, in fact, are as close to you as your phone. And because I've spent the money to get these really nice sound-canceling, Bluetooth, high-fidelity headphones, the music on my phone sounds great. But a few months ago, I had myself a bout of nostalgia and decided to take my love of music back to its roots, back to my childhood. And so I started getting into vinyl again. Whoa, stop! Don't click off. I know, trust me, I know. But I promise you this video is not about to turn into that conversation that you've heard dozens of times from record people. Although I do love listening to vinyl, and I really do love this collection of albums that I'm creating, I'm not under this impression that vinyl is the highest form of music, and that you can't truly be a music lover unless you listen to your music solely on vinyl albums. Actually, I've had an idea about making a video that tackles all the myths and misconceptions about vinyl. Something that blows the lid off of all the things that you've heard about vinyl that simply aren't true. And if this is a video you'd like to see, leave me a comment below. And so I did get interested in vinyl, but not in a weird hipster way. What really started it was a couple of years ago, my dad, as he was getting older, decided it would be better for him to move out of his house and get an apartment, which would be easier to deal with. And so there was a lot of stuff in his house he couldn't take with him. As me and the siblings were cleaning out his house, I stumbled into his record collection. He still had some of his old vinyls. He didn't have a turntable anymore, but he had kept his vinyls, and he said that I could take any of them that I wanted, which I did. Even though I didn't have a turntable, I thought, well, maybe eventually I'll get one and I'll listen to the albums. Well, about a month later, I saw a deal on a really nice turntable. It wasn't massive, but it was decent enough to listen to music, and it had a really good quality and the sound to it, so I picked one up. After I did that, I figured, well, as long as I got the turntable, maybe I'll pick up a couple of other albums, maybe some things that I listened to when I was a kid that I might want to listen to again. And then my collection started to grow. I do have to admit, I did have some trepidation about starting a vinyl hobby because, well, first of all, I do have ADHD, and I was afraid this was going to turn into an ADHD hobby. And if you have ADHD, you know what that means. You get laser focused on something that you really enjoy. You just go all in on this hobby. You buy everything that you can get your hands on. Money is no object until, of course, you run out of money. You study everything you can about the subject. You just go all in for a few months, but then the fire dies out and you get bored with it and you go on to the next thing, and all that stuff that you purchased basically just gathers dust. And I certainly wasn't interested in getting the vinyl if that's where it was eventually going to lead. If I was just going to wind up with a bunch of dusty records and a dusty turntable, I could spend my money doing something else. But I did buy a turntable, and I did start buying vinyl. And although I did have a lot of that ADHD laser focus in the beginning, and it has kind of died down a little bit, it never really fully went away. Sundays for me are album days, and so I like to sit in my chair, pop out a couple of albums, and listen to them front to back. Although I'm obviously not a goth, I listen to a lot of post-punk and gothic rock albums. They are the majority of my collection, but I also listen to a lot of punk, a lot of oldies, a lot of pop music, hip-hop. I have a varied and eclectic collection of albums that I love to listen to. And I have to say, one of my other trepidations about albums was, of course, that I was afraid people were going to think I was a record guy. Let's be honest, there are some people who are into vinyl way too much. But it doesn't necessarily have to be vinyl. I mean, maybe they're into antique classic cars, or they love collecting books, or they're really into coffee to the degree where they're roasting and grinding their own beans and using a French press. And there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I feel like everybody should have like that one thing that they're really passionate about, that they can focus a lot of energy into and get a lot of enjoyment out of. But I really feel like there's a difference between that and taking some air of superiority because you do things maybe a little more intensely than somebody else does. You're a real coffee drinker because you use a French press, and people who use a Keurig, well, they're not real coffee drinkers at all. But you see this type of thing a lot in different hobbies and interests and groups in general, where you have like one group of people who are in it like full bore, that are extremely interested in it, that try to learn everything they can about it. And then you have other people who maybe aren't quite as interested, but they like dipping their toes in the water every once in a while. But these are the people that the first group are really scornful about because they're not serious about it like they should be. But I do understand that sometimes hobbies and interests aren't just hobbies and interests, that identity gets pulled into that, and it can be really difficult for somebody who has a hobby or an interest or a group of people that they base their identity off of. I can understand where that can be a problem when somebody else is trying to come in who just really doesn't take it as seriously. But that's really a topic for another video. Or in my case, what I'm thinking about in that situation, that would be the topic for a bunch of videos. But I'm basically talking about a simple hobby, something that you enjoy, that perhaps other people enjoy, something that you invest a lot of energy in, that you enjoy the time you spend doing. I think that's great, and I think everybody should have something like that in their lives, like I've said. But just because you have something like that in your life, it doesn't make you superior to somebody else. And just because you love something doesn't mean you have to be an asshole about it.